is nung midterm interlude and last week, which is holiday. So, magka-catch up tayo, but it's okay kasi we're down to last 4 modules before the semester ends. So that is module 6 to 9. And if I'm not mistaken, if my memory serves me right, second week or third week of December ang last day of classes nyo for this semester. Have enough time to discuss lahat ng nasa outline. Hopefully matapos natin, but I'm sure matatapos naman natin yan. So last meeting, ang last na in-upload ko during your asynchronous class is the module 6, which is about utilitarianism. So for today, that's what we're going to discuss. Hopefully, nabasa niyo na yung module. I'll just share my screen. Visible na ba yung screen ko?
Yes po, ma'am.
Okay. We'll start the discussion. By the way, kung mawala yung or ma-stop yung pag-share screen ko, pa-inform ako. So, para maayos ko agad yung screen. And also sa audio ko or sa sound ko, pag nawalan ako ng sounds, pa-inform na lang ako. So, we'll start by discussing first utilitarianism. Utilitarianism is one of the listed theories na nakalagay sa outline natin to be discussed. This is the fourth theory, I guess. We'll start first by defining what utilitarianism is. Utilitarianism is a theory of moral philosophy that is based on the principle that an action is morally right if it produces a greater quantity of good or happiness than any other possible action. The best line to summarize it is the second one, greatest happiness for the greatest number. This is the geist of utilitarianism. You can say that an action is morally good if it produces greatest happiness for the greatest number of people. So take note, we're not just looking for the quality, but also for the quantity. Quality of what? Quality of the happiness gained or attained by a person by doing that act, and also the quantity, the number of people being affected by your action. And we can say that an action is immoral if it produces pain for the greatest number of people. So, ang kabaligtaran ng happiness is pain. Also, we will encounter a lot of terms such as happiness, pleasure, pain, harm in reading utilitarianism. Kung sa module, also sa mga articles na nasa internet, sa books, those are the terms you'll frequently encounter if you're going to read anything about utilitarianism. Happiness, pain, pleasure, harm, danger. So that's it. To further explain this definition, I have here an example, hypothetical example. So hypothetically, you are a doctor and has only 5 doses of vaccines. Also, you have 5 patients. 4 of your patients are ill and only need 1 dose of vaccines each to survive. However, you have 1 patient that is severely ill and sa sobrang lala ng sakit niya, he need 5 doses vaccines. In the utilitarianism perspective, how would you address that problem? What will be your remedies or solution on that problem? Would you rather cure that one person na nakaka-experience ng malalang karamdaman and give all the 5 vaccines dun sa person na yon, or choose or pipiliin mo yung 4 na patient na kailangan lang tig-iisang dose of vaccine? As what I've said, ang guys na utilitarianism is greatest happiness for the greatest number. So dun sa binigay kong example, of course, as a doctor, following or with the guidance of the utilitarian perspective, you will choose to save those 4 patients na kailangan lang tig-iisang vaccine in expense dun sa life ng isang patient na kailangan 5. Siyempre, pag pinili mo yung 4, you also have to consider na you are sacrificing the life of that person, yung nag-iisang patient. Pero sa utilitarianism, you can justify that action kasi mas marami yung manginginabang pag pinili mo yung 4 na pasyente. Instead na pagalingin yung isa, 4 yung madidisregard since mauubos 5 vaccines dun lang sa isang pasyente. Kaya yun ang sinasabi ng utilitarianism. Greatest happiness for the greatest number. So, pag pinili mo yung 4 yung makaka-experience ng happiness and mas marami yung naka-experience ng happiness kaysa pag pinili mo yung isa. Also, discussing that, we can conclude that utilitarianism is consequentialism in nature. What do we mean by consequentialism? So easy to define kasi from the word itself, consequences, meaning to say, we are after the consequences of an action. We are after the result, the product of an action. Consequentialism says that no action is good or bad in itself. Rather, it is good or bad only in terms of its consequences. Meaning to say, for example, the act of stealing. You cannot conclude agad-agad na ang pagnanakaw is mali. Kasi sa consequentialism, ang kailangan mong i-consider is yung result or yung consequences ng ginawa mo. So, kung halimbawa, nagnakaw ka para may mapakain ka sa pamilya mo, and yung pamilya mo is family of 12, then you can justify yung pagnanakaw in the perspective of the utilitarianism. Kasi syempre, nagnakaw ka para sa ikabubusog, ikakasaya ng pamilya mo, which is family of 12 plus ikaw, 13. So, mas marami yung nanginabang kesa dun sa, for example, dinukutan mo. Isang tao lang yung dinukutan mo. And yung nadukot mong pera is para naman sa pamilya mo. So, you can justify that. But, if the act of stealing will cause more harm than more happiness to other people, to greater number of people, then that act of stealing will now be considered immoral. For example, you are a politician and you are stealing sa kaban ng bayan. By stealing sa kaban ng bayan, taong bayan ang maapektuhan. Then, babawasan yung projects, quality projects, yung food, yung way of living ng tao is sa-sacrifice. Therefore, mas marami yung makaka-experience ng pain rather than ng happiness. Kaya, dun mo masasabi na act of stealing is immoral. Unlike dun sa first example na act of stealing can be justified kasi mas maraming nanginabang, mas maraming naka-experience ng happiness kaysa pain. So, yun ang sinasabi ng utilitarianism. If you have question, you can butt in so we can address it. I can address it. Let's proceed now with the prominent philosophers na nakadikit sa theory ng utilitarianism. We have two prominent philosophers. First is Jeremy Bentham, and second is John Stuart Mill. We'll start by discussing first Jeremy Bentham, because Jeremy Bentham is the one who founded the utilitarianism, kaya siya yung tinaguriang father of utilitarianism. Also, Jeremy Bentham is the one who introduced the philosophic calculus or calculus of felicity. What do we mean by philosophic calculus? Philosophic calculus is a method of determining the rightness of an action by balancing the probable pleasures and pain that it would produce. Pagkapasa niyo pa lang ng philosophic calculus, the first term that will come to your mind is something about mathematics related. And all mathematics related subjects have formulas. Ganon din dito sa philosophic calculus. We have here formula to determine kung gaano ka tama, the rightness, kung tama ba o mali ang isang bagay. So how do we do this philosophic calculus? It is created by combining hedonism and democracy. Hedonism is discussed na sa module nyo, first part ng module nyo, it was discussed there. But ngayon, hinapyawan ko na lang siya, pina-click ko na lang yung hedonism because we will discuss hedonism also in a separate day and in a separate topic. So hedonism is the pursuit of pleasures and avoidance of pains. Basically, hedonism is about sa kung ano ang magpapasaya sa isang tao. So, itong philosophic calculus is the combination of hedonism and democracy. The hedonic calculus is used to evaluate how much pleasure or pain would be caused by an action. So, another formula, to be specific, para mas put nyo into mind is, for example, you add all the positive thing or the thing that produces happiness, also combine all the things that produces pain, and if you add or subtract then, pag nag-equal siya sa mas maraming pabor, then the action is good. Pero pag nag-equal siya sa mas maraming hindi pabor, then the action will be immoral. For example, mass vaccination. I guess karamihan sa inyo is vaccinated na, and if not, I encourage everyone to be vaccinated. For example, 104 million Filipino, let's say 104 million yung nagpabakuna. Sa 104 million na yon, 100 million katao yung nag-approve, yung okay sa vaccine. And sa 104 million na yun, 4 million yung disapprove and parang naka-experience ng severe side effects. For example, ikinasama nila yung vaccine, mas nakasama sa kanila yung vaccine, 4 million yon. Pero pag sinubtract mo, 100 minus 4 million is equals to 96. Majority pa rin ng mga nagpa-vaccine is okay or naka-experience ng greatest happiness. Kung mas marami ang naka-experience ng happiness on that action, particularly the mass vaccination, we can conclude that mass vaccination is morally good since mas maraming naka-experience ng happiness or pleasure by the act of vaccination. So that illustrates what philosophic calculus is. Moreover, Bentham claims that there are 7 criteria or categories to examine when utilizing philosophic calculus or calculus of felicity. These criteria or categories are the following. First, the intensity. How intense is the pleasure? Kung gaano ka kasaya, kung gaano ka pinapasaya ng isang bagay. The duration, how long does it last? Kung gaano ka katagal naging masaya bagay na yon. Gaano ka katagal magiging masaya. Basta it is something about time, the duration. The certainty, kung gaano ka ka-sure na yung bagay na yan is really magpapasaya sa'yo. Kung yung bagay na yan is magpapasaya ba talaga sa'yo or yung bagay na yan is iniisip mo lang na papasayahin ka even though there are consequences ng action na yon. The fourth one, propinquity. How soon will it occur? Kung ginawa mo ba yung action na to, magiging masaya ka agad or maghihintay ka pa ng hours, ng days, ng years bago ka maging masaya. For example, yung pag-aaral mo, pag nag-aral ka ba ngayon, magiging masaya ka na agad? Syempre hindi, kasi you have to undergo the process and mas ma-feel mo yung joy if may na-achieve ka na or for example, mataas yung score mo, that's the time lang na ma-feel mo na sumaya ka talaga sa pag-aaral. Hindi naman yung pakabasa mo, naging masaya ka agad. Pwede rin naman, depende sa binabasa mo, but the real pleasure is when you experience satisfaction out of that action. The fifth one, the fecundity, how many more? Happiness or pleasure. Sixth one, the purity, how free from pain is the pleasure. Because as we all know, not all pleasure are pleasure alone. May mga happiness na may kasabay na pain, merong happiness muna, then pain, merong happiness, then pain. So, we should take into consideration this. And the last one, the seventh criteria or category is the extent. EXTENT. So, sorry sa typo. It's the extent, meaning to say how many people are affected. You have to consider kung ilan yung maapektuhan ng action mo, ilan yung mabebenepisyohan, ilan yung mapeperwisyo sa action mo. So, these are the categories or criteria you have to take into consideration when doing or performing a specific action or decision during your decision making. Kapag binasa natin or kapag ganito, for example, in our discussion purposes, some of you might think na parang sino na magagamit ng ganyang formula para mag-arrive sa isang decision or sa isang solution? Sino na mag-compute pa for a specific action, for a specific consequences? But let us don't hindi naman talaga yung technical nangyayari na ganun pa sunod-sunod. But if we just think about it, we're actually doing these things, doing the philosophic calculus in our simple decisions na mga nagawa na natin in the previous. Like, pag tinanong lang natin na, pag ba ako nagganito, magiging masaya ba ako? Pag ba ako naging ganito, what will happen sa family ko? Will my friends like kapag ginawa ko tong ganito? Will my parents be proud of me pag naging ganito ko or pag ito yung decision ko? What else? Next week ba magiging ganito pa rin ako ka-happy pag ginawa ko to? So, that simple questions, you are actually taking into consideration this category or criteria. Hindi mo namamalaya na you're actually performing the philosophic calculus or calculus of felicity. So, that is what Jeremy Bentham's Utilitarianism says. We'll now proceed to the other prominent philosopher in the name of John Stuart Mill. So John Stuart Mill is the wayward disciple of Bentham. Pag sinabi nating wayward, you have contradictions, objections, stubborn, and I mean, not easily agreeing to someone. Yun ang sinasabi nating wayward. Wayward si John Stewart Mill because he opposed or he object to some of the theories of Jeremy Bentham. But that doesn't necessarily mean that he opposed to the idea of utilitarianism. We're discussing John Stuart Mill now because obviously he is agreeing to the utilitarianism. However, meron lang mga ideas si Mill na nagko-contradict sa ideas ni Jeremy Bentham. We have here 3 objections of John Stuart Mill to the idea of Jeremy Bentham. The first objection for John Stuart Mill is that utilitarianism allegedly endorses a swinish doctrine. Swinish doctrine, from the term swine. Swine is a pig, and pig is an animal. So, para kay John Stuart Mill, ang utilitarianism ni Jeremy Bentham is swinish doctrine. Meaning to say, parang nagkakapareho yung pagtingin ng tao sa kung ano ang tama at mali, sa kung ano ang tama at mali sa mga hayop. Because for Jeremy Bentham, he only presupposed that pleasure and pain are general concepts. Pag naging masaya ka sa bagay na to, napapasaya ka ng bagay na to. Pag nasaktan ka ng bagay na to, this thing cause you pain, cause you harm. And as a person, we are only after the pleasure and the avoidance of pain. So, we can agree or we can disagree, pero most of us, if not all, are always looking up to something na magpapasaya sa atin. And also, we are avoiding things na makakasakit sa atin. So, parang ganun din naman yung mga hayop. Hindi nag-iisip yung mga hayop, basta kung may something silang nag-enjoy, dun sila, kung something na nasasaktan sila, aalis sila dun. For example, a toy, if an animal or a pet gets comfortable to a toy, it will always play with that toy. But if an animal gets burned sa mainit na kettle, then that animal will avoid that kettle. Yun yung sinasabi ni John Stuart Mill towards Jeremy Bentham. Kasi yung belief ni Jeremy Bentham is ganon. Ang mga tao is only after the happiness and the avoidance of pain. While John Stuart Mill, he suggests that there are hierarchy or level of happiness. Kung halimbawa, nag-enjoy ka sa sip of coffee mo, you are being happy. But that kind of happiness is lower happiness compared kapag ikaw nag-enjoy ka na magbasa ng philosophy books. Yung pagbabasa ng philosophy books, yung happiness that you gain from that book is a higher level than the happiness you gain from sipping a coffee. Why? Because the happiness you gain sa pagbabasa ng philosophy books enhances your rationality. And for John Stuart Mill, we are not like a swine. We are not like an animal. We are more than the animal. Therefore, the happiness na dapat ini-aim natin is the higher level of happiness na ini-aim ng mga animals. So, yun yung sinasabi ni John Stuart Mill. Second objection, utilitarianism is bound to fail because there is no objective way by which we can decide on which type of pleasure is superior than the other types. Yun yung sinasabi ko before, kanina, na para kay Bentham, happiness is happiness, pain is pain. Yun lang, general. But for John Stewart Mill, there should be level of happiness. There should be hierarchy of happiness. Kaya yung utilitarianism ni Jeremy Bentham, there is no objective way. Hindi mo malalaman kung what type of happiness is the happiness you are gaining, what type of pain is the pain you are experiencing. Because para kay Jeremy Bentham, general concept ang happiness, general concept ang pain. And the last objection of John Stewart Mill is that it cannot account for the moral goodness of acts of martyrdom or self-sacrifice. Kasi kanina kay Jeremy Bentham, if isinaalang-alang mo yung kapakanan ng mas nakakarami, then you are rigidly following utilitarianism. Kapag, example, mas pinili mo na ibigay na lang sa iba yung pagkain, kahit nagugutom ka, that will count as utilitarianist practice. But for John Stuart Mill, that is not utilitarian practice. Kasi ang aim ng utilitarianism is for the greatest happiness. How can you gain happiness if you are depriving yourself from that kind of happiness? Siyempre, pag nagiging martyr ka, you chose na ikaw na lang masaktan kaysa ikaw yung makasakit. So, parang nagko-contradict yan sa sinasabi ng utilitarianism na greatest happiness. How can you say nga naman na that action is a greatest happiness for greatest number if you yourself cannot experience that happiness? Kaya para kay John Stuart Mill, dinidisregard niya ang martyrdom or self-sacrifice. Parang ganun din yan sa example na binigay ko last meeting. If you can still recall, yung IT expert na nalaman niya na may maglo-launch na missile, and if that missile launched, thousands of people might die. But hacking the system to stop the launching of missile will violate your the IT expert's code of ethics. So will you save yourself from guilt of violating the code of ethics and let the missile launch for the sake of just following the rules, or you will violate that code of ethics para sa safety ng thousands of people na maaaring mamatay kapag hindi mo hinak yung system? So, yun ang sinasabi ni John Stuart Mill. And we are down sa last topic ng module nyo, which are the two types of the utilitarianism, namely the act utilitarianism and the rule utilitarianism. Sa act utilitarianism, an action is right if and only if it produces the greatest balance of pleasure over pain for the greater number. While sa rule utilitarianism, an action is right if and only if it conforms to a set of rules, the general acceptance or the norms of which would produce the greatest balance of pleasure over pain for the greatest number. So, I'll just use again yung sa kakasabi ko lang na example sa IT expert. Kapag pinili mo na i-save yung million of people over yung sarili mong conscience na pag-violate sa code of ethics, you are performing act utilitarianism because you are taking into consideration the number of people that might be affected by your action. Siyempre, pag hinak mo yung system to stop the launching of missile, mas marami yung makaka-experience ng happiness. Therefore, that action will be under the category of act utilitarianism. Kapag naman sa rule utilitarianism, if there are rules or law that allows you to hack the system, then that hacking is moral. Pero pag wala namang rule, then it's not moral.
since dun sa sinabi ko, nasa code of ethics ng isang IT experts is not to hack, and then you choose to hack the system, that kind of action will be immoral since you violate the rule or the set of general acceptance or the norms. Yun ang distinguishment or I mean distinction, the distinction of act and rule utilitarianism. Down to our last slide for our today's meeting is the application of utilitarian theory. This is a scenario. If you can use 80 soldiers to deploy in war and thereby attack the enemy force that threatens the entire place, let's say a community with thousands of population, and kill several hundred enemy soldiers, that is a good choice even though the 80 might be killed. Parang ganun lang din sa example ko kanina sa doctor. Siyempre, mas pipiliin mo ng i-sacrifice yung isang patient for the sake na mabuhay yung 4 na patient. Ganon din dito. The decision to sacrifice the 80 soldiers to save the entire community with a population of 1,000, it is justifiable kahit mamatay pa yung 80 soldiers mo. In the perspective of utilitarianism. Because kung babalikan natin yung guys, greatest happiness for the greatest number of people. That we could take into consideration 2 important factors, the quantity and the quality. So dito sa example, kahit 80 yung malaga sa tauhan mo or 80 yung mamatay na soldiers mo para iligtas yung 1,000 population, it is justifiable. So ganun ang line of thinking ng utilitarian or ng isang utilitarianist. Do you have any questions? Class?
Wala naman ata po, ma'am.
Okay, wala na. So, na-post ko na sa Google Classroom yung itong Module 6 and you can see that there is a learning output. Pero papalitan natin yon. Instead, kung ano yung nakalagay doon na learning output, your output should be cite as many as you can strengths and weaknesses of utilitarianism. It will be by group, and gaya ng ginawa ko before, magiging visible lang yung assignment sa mga group leaders. Is it okay? For our next meeting or during your asynchronous meeting, you can brainstorm with your group mates of the strengths and weaknesses of utilitarianism. You can get idea sa mga examples na binigay ko. I give examples already na mag-show ng weaknesses as well as ng strengths ng utilitarianism. Do you have any other questions? Before I forget, meron pa palang mga hindi pa nakakasubmit ng midterm examinations. For BSME 2C, may isa pa. For 2B, 2. And for 2A, isa rin. Just reminder na mag-submit na po. I already became so lenient in terms of time nung midterm examination. It's a plenty of time. Until now, I will still accept for these persons, 4 persons who haven't submitted yet their midterm examination. But for finals, I'll be more strict sa submission ng final paper. Kasi I already gave the final requirement. It was discussed first meeting nung binigay ko yung outline or syllabus. Nandun po yun. If you forgot, you can check it para until now, I mean, starting now, you can already think of a topic regarding your final paper. Wait lang. Nasa chat. Ma'am, when daw po deadline ng final requirement? Final requirement deadline is last day ng semester. I will still double check kung kailan yung last day. But I will post that early para dun sa mga tapos na, you are free from stress na makikinig na lang kayo ng synchronous classes natin and kung may learning outputs pa. By the way, na lang, 3 modules. Kasi natapos na natin yung pang 6. Mali 7 and 8 and 9 na lang. Ma'am, wala pa po at uploaded module 6 sa Block B. Okay, tingnan ko. I-check ko sa Block B. Pero sa Block A and Block C, okay na. Na-post ko na yung module 6. Ma'am, pwede po malaman yung name no? Wala pang midterm through PM na lang po sa akin. Para po ma-notify po namin. Thank you. Okay, I'll just take note. John Melchor Candia. Anong block ka po? Candia. Block C. Okay. Other questions? 2A. How about sa 2B? Sinong pwedeng same person? General Char Candia. Okay, thank you. Okay. That's it. Ang name nyo naman sa Facebook or sa group chat is same ng name nyo ngayon, no?
Yes po, ma'am.
Okay. Check ko na lang sa GC natin and I'll just send yung names ng hindi pa nagsasubmit ng midterm examination. Okay, noted, Adeline. Any more questions? Yung score nyo pa, wait na lang this week or next week, pero na-encode ko na siya sa Excel. And computing your midterm grades, pero hindi ko pa siya napopost sa faculty center namin because isahan namin pinopost midterm grade and final grade. So, I'll have to wait till matapos ang SEM. Para isahan lang ang pag-input ko sa faculty center. Okay, so Block B, ipopost ko na lang yung Module 6 and the learning output, ipopost ko na lang din sa kanya-kanyang Google Classroom for the leaders only, but you can use our asynchronous meeting to brainstorm with your group mates. And the next meeting, we'll discuss Module 7. The following will be Module 8 and the last one, Module 9. Kung matapos natin agad, I can maximize the time para i-discuss ng isang meeting yung 8 and 9 for you to have enough time sa paggawa ng final paper. Para makasubmit lahat on time. Kasi po may deadline din kami ng pag-input ng grades and for those na mga malilate, might appear na INC. So, I will give time na lang, enough time for you to finish your final paper. But kung gusto nyo nang matapos agad, you can check again yung outline or syllabus. Not sure kung saan nakalagay yun. Basta, na-upload ko na yun sa Google Classroom natin. Andun na yung format, yung instructions sa outline. Okay, everything clear?
Yes po, ma'am.
Okay, if you have no more questions, may I request again